Good evening. You are listening to Paranormally Speaking with your host, Neal Parks. It is currently September 25th, 2011. Where I am right now in Chillicothe, Ohio, I believe it is right about 68 degrees outside. I had a beautiful afternoon to put up all of my Halloween decorations. I was lucky in that department. Had a really good day, in fact. I would like to hear a response from all of you. If you'd feel free to email me or send me a personal message through Facebook or Skype or Twitter or on the www.psn-radio.com website. You can go directly to a page made especially for this webcast, or you could go to www.soupmedianetwork.com/paranormally speaking. Thank you for tuning in. And tonight, of course, is the season premiere of Desperate Housewives and The Good Wife. I can only hope that I will have your undivided attention on this fine evening. Tonight's topic, Vengeful Spirits. We will be discussing imps, Native American curse spirits, the Amityville Mansion, and the alleged horror that took place within the four walls of that home, demons masquerading as angry spirits, and, of course, the Grudge movies. The list goes on. Hot topics, new topics. It's current events time. Is it illegal to hunt aliens? Someone asked me this question the other day, if there are any laws against hunting aliens. I wasn't sure at first, so I researched it. This is what I found. I happened upon Title 14, Section 1211 of the Code of Federal Regulations. According to the federal regulation on October 5th, 1982, Dr. Brian Clifford of the Pentagon announced that contact between U.S. citizens and extraterrestrials on their vehicles is strictly illegal. According to a law already on the books, Title 14, Section 1211 of the Code of Federal Regulations adopted July 16, 1969. Anyone guilty of such contact automatically becomes a criminal and may be jailed for 1 year and fined up to $5,000. I could not find any passage on laws about hunting extraterrestrials. However, I believe the government would use something like that to detain you, especially in this post-9/11 world that we live in. Most importantly, you must remember, if you kill or wound an alien, or come close to one, in order to check on your prey if you are hunting them, you have just come into contact with said alien. Hence the above law you've just broken. Bigfoot, alive and well and living in North Carolina? Bigfoot has apparently gone blonde and lives in North Carolina, at least according to Cleveland County resident Tim Peeler, who told local authorities of his encounter with the 10-foot-tall creature, reports the Charlotte Observer. Peeler thought he was calling coyotes, but instead got surprised and frightened by what or who came calling. Instead of him, Peeler, who lives in a rural area near South Mountain State Park, told NBC affiliate WCNC News, Channel 36, "This thing was 10 foot tall. He had beautiful hair," said Peeler, adding that it looked like the creature had 6 fingers on each hand. "I came out here and rough-talked him and run him off," continued Peeler. But then the creature returned. Luckily, the encounter ended safely when Peeler got a bit more aggressive. "I said, get away from here, get!" And he went right back up into the path again. Sergeant Mark Self of the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office responded to the suspicious person called by Peeler. "It scared me," said Shelf. "This is just totally blowing my mind, and they even brought it back up," added the Sasquatch legend that has been in the county since the 1970s. "It doesn't bother me now. I don't think there's anything to it," Self said. Still, the sheriff's office plans to continue its routine patrols of the area. "If we see something, we'll try to capture it and take it into custody," he added. So campers and hikers visiting the state park, one of North Carolina's least developed recreational sites, be forewarned. You might want to plan on carrying a big stick and leaving the coyote caller at home. A huge black triangle UFO low over Wixom, Michigan. A Michigan witness stopped at a red light in Wixom, reports a low-flying, black triangle-shaped object with 3 white lights. It moved overhead, according to September 20th, 2011 testimony from the Mutual UFO Network, MUFON. Witness reporting database. The witness pulled over into her office complex parking lot, stopped, and rolled the car window down. There's no sound at all coming from this object, the witness reported. It was huge. It was moving fairly slow, going slightly southeast. The witness described the encounter. The sky around the object was still dark. It was 6:18 in the morning, but still bluish. The area between the 3 lights was solid black. I tried to find my phone to attempt to take a picture, but it was in my purse. When I finally found it and looked back up, the object was too far away. When I first observed it, I knew it was not a plane. The lights were of a white that was different from any light that I had ever seen. And this, of course, will lead us into our first break for the evening. I'm going to play a series of commercial advertisements, so our sponsors will be happy. And while we're waiting, go ahead and log on to the PSN Radio chat room and tell us what you think so far of the show or of any other shows you might be listening to at this current point in time. I'll go ahead and leave you with the Jackal's Head promo and talk to you as soon as we return. Be patient and be kind. Hey, welcome back to PSN Radio and Paranormally Speaking. I'm your host, Neal Parks, author, radio and TV personality, paranormal researcher and investigator, and of course the host of this radio show, Paranormally Speaking, webcast. You can log on to www.psn-radio.com and join us on the chat network, Tell us how you're doing this evening. Talk about whether or not you played softball this weekend, if you got into any awesome projects on Saturday or Sunday, if you yourself have done any investigating, if you have any particular questions about tonight's topic, or any questions, complaints, concerns, or suggestions. Feel free to log on to www.psn-radio.com or www.suitmedianetwork.com/paranormally speaking. Topic for tonight is Vengeful Spirits. Earlier I mentioned several locations and examples of an entity seeking vengeance. The definition of a vengeful spirit is as follows. A vengeful spirit is one that acts violently to avenge something, a wrong done to them. While they are generally ghosts, the spirit may belong to someone still alive, but close to death. This group does not include the spirits of people continuing acts of evil that they perpetuated while alive. First example I gave earlier, the Amityville Mansion. The Amityville is best known as the setting of the Amityville Horror by J. Anson, which was published in 1977 and has been turned into a series of films made between 1979 and 2005. The story of the Amityville Horror can be traced back to a real-life murder case in Amityville in November of 1974 when Ronald Defoe Jr. shot and killed 6 members of his family at 112 Ocean Avenue. December of 1975, George and Kathy Lutz and Kathy's 3 children moved into this house, but left after only 28 days, claiming to have been terrorized by paranormal phenomenon produced by the house. J. Anson's novel is said to be based on these events, but has been the subject of much controversy. The house featured in the novel and its film's version still exist, but has been renovated and the address changed in order to discourage tourists from visiting it. The Dutch Colonial Revival architectural house was built in 1927, was put on the market in May of 2010 and sold for $1.15 million, and it was sold in September for $950,000. George would wake up. These are some of the things that would take place, of course, while George and his family were living there at that time. George claimed to have woke up every morning at around 3:15 and would go out to check the boathouse. Later he would learn that this was the estimated time of the Defoe killings. Also, the house was allegedly plagued by swarms of flies, despite the fact that they were in the middle of winter weather. Kathy, George's wife, had vivid nightmares about the murders and discovered the order in which they occurred and the rooms where they had taken place. The Lutz's children also began sleeping on their stomachs in the same way that the dead bodies in the Defoe murders had been found. Kathy would feel a sensation as if being embraced in a loving manner by an unseen force. George discovered a small hidden room around 4 feet by 5 feet behind shelving in the basement. The walls were painted red, and the room did not appear to be in the blueprints of the house. The room came to be known as the Red Room. This room had a profound effect on their dog Harry, who refused to go near it and cowered as if sensing something negative. There were cold spots and odors of perfume and excrement in areas of the house where no wind drafts or piping would explain the source of the odor. While tending to the fire, George and Kathy saw the image of a demon with half his head blown out. It was burned into the soot of the back of the fireplace. The Lutz's 5-year-old daughter, Missy, developed an imaginary friend named Jody, a demonic pig-like creature with glowing red eyes. George would be woken up by the sound of the front door slamming. He would race downstairs to find the dog sleeping soundly at the front door, and nobody else heard the sound, although it was loud enough to wake the house. George would hear what was described as German marching band tuning up, or what sounded like a clock radio playing, not quite on frequency, but when he went downstairs the noise would cease. George realized that he bore a strong resemblance to Ronald Defoe Jr. and began drinking at the Witch's Brew, the bar where Defoe was once a regular customer. When closing Missy's window, which Mary and Jody climbed out of, Kathy saw red glowing eyes staring at her. While in bed, Kathy received red welts on her chest caused by an unseen force and was levitated 2 feet off of her bed. Reports of locks and doors and windows in the house that were damaged by an unseen force, cloven hoof prints attributed to an enormous pig appeared in the snow outside the house on January 1st, 1976. Blood oozed from the walls in the hall and also from the keyhole of the playroom door in the attic. A 12-inch, 30-centimeter crucifix hung in the living room by Kathy, revolved until it was upside down and gave off a sour smell. George tripped over a 4-foot-high, 1.2-meter china lion, which was an ornament in the living room, and has left with him bite marks on his ankles. George saw Kathy transform into an old woman of around 90 years old. The hair wild, a shocking white, and the face massive wrinkles and ugly lines, and saliva dripping from the toothless mouth. Missy would sing constantly in her room. Whenever she would go out of the room, she stopped singing, but going back into the room, she would go back into sing where she had left off at that time. After deciding that something was wrong with their house, they could not explain rationally. George and Kathy Lutz carried out a blessing on their home. January 8th, 1976. George held a silver crucifix while they both recited the Lord's Prayer, and while in the living room, George allegedly heard a chorus of voices telling him, "Will you stop?" By mid-January 1976, after another attempt at a house blessing by George and Kathy, they experienced that what would turn out to be their final night in the house. The Lutzes declined to give a full account of the events that took place in the occasion, describing them as much too frightening to retell. This moves us into the Marion, Ohio Cemetery, and Marion, Ohio, of course, United States. The Amityville Mansion was located in New York State. Marion, Ohio. There is a tombstone that rests within the cemetery of Marion, Ohio. A woman died mysteriously, and after being buried, her face appeared in the tombstone with a pair of hands wrapped around her neck. There were dozens of people who remember hearing before her death that her killer will pay for his crimes. This is what she said in her last breath, apparently, or said to someone. People started to suspect her husband for her murder, considering that she died with traces of a mysterious toxin in her system. It was a foreign substance that they could not identify nor link to the husband. It was the early 1970s when this occurred. The husband was supposedly having violent dreams after her death and visions, and started seeing his wife everywhere he went. He went mad and eventually committed suicide in the same house where his wife died. In the end, the husband and wife were buried next to one another, and the face of the wife with the phantom hands around her neck now had arms, and those arms connected to the body of the husband. They had made several attempts to clean the tombstone, replace it, and reposition it. However, the faces continue to appear to this day. And many years ago, on a dare, my father-in-law decided on a dare to urinate on the tombstone in Marion, Ohio. The Curse of Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Chief Cornstalk placed a curse with his final breath after the treaty was broken. The Mothman incident, of course, has occurred in Point Pleasant, which many attributed to the curse that was placed on the grounds by Chief Cornstalk, and bizarre accidents continue to occur on a regular basis in Point Pleasant. Indian curses go hand in hand with negative energies, negative forces. There's a lot of negative and vengeful spirits connected to curses, especially in Native American culture. The Grudge movies, which I mentioned earlier, the Grudge movies are a perfect example of a vengeful spirit. The traditional Japanese spirit world is layered with yomi, one on one extreme, and in the physical world on the other. In between is sort of a purgatory. This is what the movies are based on in the Grudge series. They all take place around this strange, mystical, dark Asian spirit that comes back from the dead and wreaks havoc on those, and basically killing them the same way that the spirit was, that the person was killed and the spirit's left behind. And between is sort of a purgatory, an uncertain and ambiguous waiting area where spirits languish before moving on. Ghosts in between this between state, who are very powerful from love, jealousy, hatred, or sorrow, can bridge the gap back to the physical plane, where they can haunt and wreak havoc on their earthly tormentors. In the movies, traditionally, Onryo and other yuri had no particular appearance. However, with the rising popularity of the kabuki during the Edo period, a specific costume was developed, and of course this goes hand in hand with the Grudge movies. If you remember the costume of the Vengeful Spirit, highly visual in nature, and with a single actor often assuming various roles within a play, kabuki developed several visual shorthands that allowed the audience to instantly clue in as to which character was on stage, as well as to emphasize the emotions and expressions of the actor. A ghost costume consisted of three main elements: white burial kimono, wild, unkept, long black hair, and white indigo face makeup called aiguma, the white gaping mouth with the white face. Of course, if anyone has seen The Grudge, I'm sure you remember the costume, the getup, and the way that she would come at you. The Ring was similar to that, but not connected to Japanese folklore, Japanese culture within Vengeful Spirits stories retelling, of course. And I mentioned earlier demons masquerading. That is also a part of the seduction within, which I've mentioned before, the seduction of the occult. You've got vengeful spirits within the demonic world, imps, and you have those masquerading as tormented loved ones or tormented souls to basically approach the masses and get them to try to open a line of communication. And when you do that, you don't necessarily know if you're getting the disgruntled spirit of the deceased, of that person who had died in a brutal fashion. You, of course, could be getting the right-hand man of Satan himself, posing as a habuki, or an imp. Of course, imps themselves are just weaker demons. They normally answer to a big boss. They themselves aren't as powerful as demons, but they are just as conniving and manipulative. And they normally like to prey on children and agitate children, entertain them, and appear as, say, imaginary friends. We're going to go ahead and take our next break, and when we return, we will be talking with the guest we have for tonight, Karen Vance Hammond. She is the author of Shoe Marks. That's her first novel. And we'll be talking to her about her book, because it's very much in line with the issue of Vengeful Spirits, which, of course, is the topic for tonight. We're going to go ahead and cut to break. Once I get our advertisements back up, we will be good to go in that department, because we cannot go without a word from our sponsor. Because that, my friends, is how the bread is buttered. Thank you.